So let's talk about software engineering and burnout. I think that these two topics are talked about together so frequently that they've almost become synonymous. So if you think about tech or you think about software engineering, you might just think about these poor, burnt out, tech workers sitting alone in the dark, being frustrated and burnt out, where they just can't take it anymore. Obviously, burnout is not exclusive to the tech industry or software engineers. Plenty of other industries and folks in those career paths experience burnout in some way or another. But I think when folks talk about burnout, more often than not, they are talking about tech employees and maybe even software engineers. I do think that this is unfortunate because I really do think that software engineering is a great career. It's something that I really enjoy, I'm passionate about. I even take time after work to make YouTube videos about software engineering. But the truth of it is if you are working as a software engineer, or that is your goal, your career path, it really is something to consider that at some point you probably will experience burnout to some degree. It's possible you won't. Maybe you're built different, but I would say for the most part, folks will experience burnout at some point, and it hits everybody different. I think the criteria for becoming burnt out is also different for different folks. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer in terms of what causes it and how to recover from it. But what I do have instead is a handful of stories that I would like to share with you from times that I have experienced burnout, and what were the things that contributed to that eventual burnout, and then what were the things that happened after the fact that kind of got me out of that rut. So I've got 3 different stories for y'all, and I really would appreciate if you have a similar experience or an experience that you would like to share to just drop that in the comments, because it can get lonely out there. So just hearing from y'all and hearing about your experiences with burnout and maybe what you did to recover from it or come out on the other side, that'd be really helpful to myself and other people watching this video. So definitely leave a comment about that down below. Alrighty, so let's hop into this first story, and this is going to go back some years ago to when I was still in college. And so I was studying computer science, getting my bachelor's degree in computer science, and I'll say this was not the best time in my life. I was definitely dealing with a lot of mental health struggles. This was COVID too, so I graduated in 2020, so things were shutting down. It was like just very ominous about where my career was going to go, whether or not I was even going to be able to finish school. All of our classes went digital, and it was just a weird time. But even before all of that, even before things started shutting down, I'll say that I wasn't doing amazing in my degree and my program. I think I was just very distracted and kind of directionless for a lot of my college time. And it took me until my senior year to really start to figure out what I needed to do in order to get a job after graduation. And for my first 3 years, I really just did not focus super hard on my studies. And I put myself in a situation where I had to put in a lot of work to catch up to where my peers were and put myself in a position where I could apply for jobs and get a job after graduation. So this is fall semester of my senior year, getting towards the end of it. And I realized I've barely built anything. I hardly know the basics of computer science, and I need to do a ton of work to get to a place where I feel comfortable applying to jobs. And so in order to do that for like a 2 to 3 month period, what I did is I woke up at like 5 a.m. every single day, and I just did computer science stuff. So whether that was reading textbooks about the technologies that I wanted to use in my career, building projects, following tutorials on YouTube, anything that I could do to get my skills in a place where I felt comfortable, and to also kind of build a good resume portfolio kind of thing. Because at the time I had one internship, but it wasn't really a software engineering internship. It was more on the system administration side. So it was kind of hard to transfer all these skills over into real world applications that I was trying to do in the next couple of months. So I guess you could just say I was grinding. I was grinding for like these at least 2 to 3 months, and it was honestly probably stretched more into my spring semester as well. And so I'd wake up 5 a.m., do a bunch of stuff before school, go to all my classes, come home, go to work, and then when I got home from work, normally it was like at least 9, 10 p.m., and then I would come back and do more studying after that. And so that was my day, just nonstop the entire day, either learning, studying, going to classes, or going to work. And honestly, this is how most students are all the time on a daily basis anyways, but I had just not done that for the first 3 years of my college career. I did kind of the bare minimum in classes. I was working the entire time. That was a lot of my focus, was just making money and making sure that I could actually pay for school. When it finally came down to, oh shoot, I don't have the skills that I need to actually do the job, I really needed to hunker down and just learn all the things that I needed to know in order to do this job. So like I said, this transitioned over into my spring semester too, which was my last semester of school. So at this time I was finishing up all of my classes, my studies, and also starting to apply for jobs, figuring out how to prepare for interviews, doing interviews, and then still doing all of this studying and learning on my own. Really ended up taking a toll on me. Was definitely a mental toll that I have not experienced since. In this time I had applied to, I think, around 500 to 600 jobs, and at some point I'm going to make a video about like getting my first job out of college, but it was so many job applications and so many rejections, only a few interviews. I think I interviewed with 3 companies out of those 600 applications. But bringing this back around to burnout, I was incredibly burnt out. I didn't really know it at the time because all I could really think about was, okay, I have to grind. I have to do all of this stuff so that I can end up getting a job. I definitely didn't think about what it was doing to me mentally or physically, because I was really just in my room all day, every day. And by the time that I did get that job, so this was a couple months after graduation, so this has been like 7-8 months at this point of kind of this cycle in this schedule. By the time I got that first job, I was so burnt out and I had no idea. And for this scenario and this time in my life, the thing that saved me from burnout was unfortunately just going from working at least 80 hours a week down to working 40 hours a week. Once I got this full-time job, I could kind of just take a breath and relax. Obviously, I still had to do the duties of the job and figure all that stuff out, but I wasn't really thinking about it too much outside of work. I really was able to relax outside of work. I could go have a drink with my friends or watch some TV, play some video games, and just do the things that I enjoyed. Whereas in the past 8 months, and this is definitely a theme for me, and I've definitely heard this from other people as well, is when you're burnt out like this, you cannot even do the things that you enjoy. So if I tried to play video games for even like 30 minutes during that 8-month span when I was grinding, I would feel so guilty about it that I wouldn't be able to even pick up the controller or, just log into that game because I couldn't do it. The amount of guilt that I had in that moment for doing something leisurely instead of doing something productive was overbearing, and I really just couldn't handle it. So that's definitely something that I've noticed, and I find myself, if I'm ever in those spaces where I can't even do the things that I enjoy, I know that I'm about to start burning out. So that's how I got out of that situation. In terms of never getting into that situation in the first place, I really just wish I had paced myself throughout my degree. If I didn't try to learn everything about computer science in like a 3-month window, then I probably would have been in a lot better position, but I did not put myself in a good position. So if I can give any advice to folks who are still in school and trying to, go through their computer science degree, just pace yourself. There is an endless, limitless amount of knowledge to pick up in this space, and you'll never be able to learn all of it. So do yourself a favor and just take it at a pace that is comfortable and is gonna not contribute to burnout like I did. All right, so let's hop into my next story. And this one is a lot different, which I think is very interesting about burnout is there is a lot of different criteria that can create burnout. And so this story is a lot different than the first one. So this one is when I was working at my last job. And instead of burnout, there's this other term floating around sometimes, which is called bore out, which is essentially you're so bored that you end up getting burnt out. And that is what happened at this job, unfortunately. I was really, really excited when I first got this job. And there were a lot of parts about it that were good and that I really enjoyed. But there were aspects of it that contributed to this, and let me get into those. The first part of this is we were working on incredibly large, multi-year type projects that were definitely very hard to celebrate the wins in between, and they were also, it's very hard to organize a project like that. So, everybody in leadership was doing the best that they could to, map these things out, but how can you really see 3 to 5 years in advance? And just a lot of the scope that goes into it keeps creeping, and it just becomes these huge snowball projects where it's very hard to see progress and very hard to see wins within the team. Because of this, we had very high turnover on the team, especially in the product world, which is also very difficult for these long-term projects because you kind of need somebody who has that vision and has the business context to tie all the pieces and all the teams that need to be involved into it. So if you have high turnover, especially in the product realm, things get very unorganized very quickly. And all of these factors over long periods of time, this was like a year and a half of these projects that were really going nowhere, we had super low team morale. And I definitely want to take some responsibility here. It is unfortunate. I think I became the worst version of myself as a professional. I could feel myself just like disassociating more and more every single day. And there were some like adjacent projects that our team was able to focus on and that I got to lead, which was like super exciting for me. And that was like the most motivated that I'd ever been at that company. And I feel like I did really great work on that project, and that kind of gave me a boost of morale. But then I went back over to the big daunting project, and things just kind of got worse and worse and worse. But I really did want to stick this out. Like I said, I was really excited to work at this company. We were working with technologies that I was really passionate about and wanted to learn more about. I was definitely like the most junior on a team of 7 developers, and so there was a lot to learn. So I wanted to give myself the chance to do that. But unfortunately, that company ended up doing mass layoffs, and I was part of that layoff group. So I wish I was able to tell you a better solution of how I got out of this burnout. But honestly, I had no part in actually curing it. It really was the layoff that got me out of this funk. It kind of gave me the wake-up call that I needed to say, like, hey, you have to take control over your career, because if you let yourself drown in these types of projects at these types of companies, everything is going to be impacted. So let me tell you, I was miserable at this job, and my girlfriend can absolutely attest to this. She just would see me in these meetings, which were going nowhere, and these projects which were also going nowhere, and the really, really low morale around this team. And she could see the ways that it was affecting me. It was affecting me outside of work, where I had almost no energy to do things after work. I could feel myself, just my personality was like draining away. I found myself frustrated all the time over things that honestly didn't really matter that much. In a weird way, this layoff was actually a huge blessing in disguise. And I think it was kind of like a pivotal point in my career where I realized that it doesn't have to be like this. And now I have the opportunity to go seek something else out. So like I said, I think it's pretty interesting, just like the different ways that burnout can happen. It can come from way too much work in a short period of time, but it can also just be this like lack of work and lack of direction and low morale over a long period of time that can also create burnout. And so finally, I'll talk about my last instance of experiencing burnout. I'm assuming this will not be the last time in my career that I experience this, but at the moment, this is the last one that I have. So now this is after I actually got laid off. I was not prepared for layoffs at all. So what happened is I went into just full grind mode from back when I was in college. And so the things that I was doing was obviously applying to jobs, but doing all the interview prep. So tons of lead code, tons of system design questions, tons of just practice problems and building. And that took up all of my time. I was working more on, applying to jobs and trying to get a new job than I was at any job previously. I was definitely working at least 60 hours a week, doing all of this, working on the weekends. And I very much fell victim to that can't enjoy anything else in life because this is the only thing that I need to focus on. And that is so frustrating, and it's something that I have not figured out how to deal with yet. It is very hard to get out, and it normally takes like a big event in order for me to get out. So in the 3 months that I spent in unemployment after layoffs, and I made a longer video talking about this entire scenario, and I'll leave that up above. But I submitted about 250 applications, did around 30 interviews between 10 to 12 companies, and just did so much prep. And thankfully, I was able to get a job at the end of this 3 months. But what happened is I took like a week in between when I got the job offer and when I started the job. And by the time I started the job, and in that week, I literally did nothing. I didn't look at any code. I didn't think about software engineering. I didn't think about the job. I didn't think about anything. I'm pretty sure I just like sat on my couch and watched TV or played video games all week. Maybe I exercised a little bit too. But again, this is because for the past 3 months, I had been burnt out. And so the only thing that was left to do was to veg out for a week before going back into the corporate world and working this job again. Because if I had gone straight from doing all these applications and interviews straight into that job, if I didn't have that week, and I wish I had more than a week, honestly, if I had done like 2 or 3 weeks, probably would have been a lot better for myself. But if I hadn't had that week, I would have gone into that job and I might have flopped, honestly. I might have just completely crashed and not been able to perform well at that job. So this leads me to the solution for this particular scenario, which is something that I am bringing into my own life now. And I really wish this was a philosophy that I had when I first started my career. But essentially, I want to make sure that I am prepared for interviews at all times. Because what happened was I was laid off and I was not prepared at all. I didn't even have an updated resume. So I had to do that. And then I had to get back into interview mode, in interview prep mode. I don't know about y'all, but when I'm not thinking about leak code or like system design problems or these other kind of coding problems that come up in interviews, they completely leave my brain. And so if you were just picking it up fresh after 2 years of not thinking about it, you're essentially starting back at zero. So that is what I had to do, and I had to put in a lot of time to get back up to speed. And I was getting interviews, but I wasn't able to perform at the level that I was kind of hoping I'd be able to perform at because, like I said, I was starting at zero. So my philosophy now is to always stay prepared, because unfortunately you just don't know what's going to happen. You can unfortunately be laid off at any time, and I'll be making a video about this again in the future, just about how I am staying prepared just in case something were to happen, making sure that I'm not doing a ton, but if I had to go back into interview mode, I would be able to pick that up and hop into interviews at really any point. So those are my stories. I hope that didn't scare you away from software engineering if you're not quite yet in the field and you're looking to get into it, because these are, small moments throughout my career. I would say the vast majority of it has been very pleasurable and very rewarding, as I've been able to learn a bunch of new stuff, deliver really cool products. And like I said, I really do enjoy this field and I do enjoy this career, but burnout, I do think, is an inevitable fact of this profession. So I just wanted to make this video to share these stories, share that other people are going through this if you are also going through it, and just kind of talk about some of the ways that I was able to come out on the other side and some things that I'm doing now and in the future to ideally prevent this from happening as much going forward. So like I said, leave a comment down below if you've experienced burnout in some fashion. I really would love to hear about your stories. Thanks a ton for watching all the way through. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I will see you in the next one.